What is going on, everybody? Today is the day of the NFL draft. It is so crazy that the NFL draft is finally here. The Bengals will be picking 18th tonight. The Bears obviously had the first pick, and they will be taking Caleb Williams. But this past day, yesterday evening, there was lots of talks about Cincinnati and Trey Hendrickson. News that absolutely came out of nowhere. We're talking about the Trey Hendrickson situation. We're talking about who the Bengals are picking in the draft. Talk about different trade possibilities for maybe Cincinnati, but maybe, just some other teams as well, some bold predictions in the draft as well. So lots of things to get into, with tonight being round one of the NFL draft. So we'll go ahead and get started here, talking about the Trey Hendrickson situation. It was reported yesterday that Trey Hendrickson has requested a trade from Cincinnati. This really came in absolutely nowhere. It came like a RKO out of nowhere. Nobody thought this was going to happen. Nobody really had any speculation or anything that Trey Hendrickson was unhappy, with Cincinnati. One thing to really take and consider here is that just because Hendrickson once traded doesn't mean he's getting traded. Obviously, the Bengals have a very, very, very short history and short track record of trading away their players, but Hendrickson is wanting a long-term extension. He signed a 4-year contract worth $60 million in the 2021 offseason, so he has 1 year left on that deal, but he signed a 1-year extension last offseason. So he has 2 years left on his deal, but he's wanting a longer contract, and Cincinnati is not really wanting to give a longer contract out to Hendrickson. Kind of a similar situation. How we heard last month that T. Higgins was unhappy in Cincinnati. He requested a trade because Cincinnati did not really talk to Higgins about wanting a long-term deal. But, Hendrickson signed an extension less than a year ago. But when you look at the contract, regulations and everything, you cannot sign 2 contract extensions in less than a year span. And that contract was less than a year ago. So I think this is more so, I think this is kind of dumb on Hendrickson's part. But honestly, I think it's more so his agent. I think his agent is completely full crap and really, really clueless. But it's understandably so. You kind of get why Hendrickson is wanting more money. He's wanting more guaranteed money because he's coming off a career year. He has leverage when it comes to negotiating with Cincinnati this season. I mean, having 17 and a half sacks this past year, a career high in sacks, 3 years with Cincinnati. He has about 40 sacks. He has been our only pass rush this past season. So he has leverage there. But like I said, when you can't negotiate, when you cannot get an extension done, 2 extensions done in less than a year, it really makes you wonder what his agent is thinking. It was reported that Hendrickson talked to Zach Taylor yesterday, and then it was even reported by, I believe it was Kelsey Conway yesterday, that, retirement was maybe, even mentioned with Hendrickson. And this is just kind of crazy to me. This is something you just really did not think was going to happen. But it sucks. Realistically, retirement with Hendrickson, I don't think that's actually going to happen. But when you're looking at him, he deserves a long-term extension. But at the same time, he's like 30 years old. He has 2 years left on his deal. So he's going to be about 32 by the time, his 2 years left are done. And like I said, he had 17 and a half sacks this past season. We got to kind of be realistic. Can he actually perform better in a year or two than he is this past season? Having 17 and a half sacks, I mean, that's going to be nearly impossible for him to do. 39 sacks in 3 years. But I think he deserves an extension, but I don't think he deserves more money than what he's currently getting, because it's one of those, kind of tricky spots where you don't want to overpay somebody, kind of towards the decline of their career. And, the Bengals, they don't overpay people, but they don't also give out guaranteed contracts. And that was something when Hendrickson signed with Cincinnati in 2021. He did not have much guaranteed money on that deal. And that's why Carl Lawson, Hendrickson was Lawson's replacement. That's why Lawson left, because there was hardly any guaranteed money on the contract. And, that's why Whitworth left years ago, because Cincinnati lowballed, him. Years ago, he wanted to stay, but Cincinnati, really did not give him a good offer. So I think Hendrickson deserves an extension. I just don't think it should be more than what he's currently getting, which is about the, I believe, 17 to 18 range, kind of around that area. But hopefully he gets the deal done. I do not expect a trade at all. At the absolute max, I'm giving it a 5% chance of him getting traded. And I know that's kind of being out there, maybe optimistic, but I just don't think a trade's going to happen. Like I said, Cincinnati very, very really trades their players away. Because, I mean, for example, look at, 2019, Zach Taylor's first year with Cincinnati. Look at all those players we really could have traded and got more draft capital for, but instead we kept them for absolutely no reason. I mean, if we wanted to, we could have traded Green. We could have traded Geno Atkins. We could have traded Dalton. I know we traded Carlos Dunlap, around that time frame, but that was for like spare change at that point. We could have traded him a couple years prior and got much more draft capital, or a pretty decent draft pick. And with Higgins, that was something else when he was, that came out about him wanting traded. Realistically, I don't think Higgins is getting traded, but it was reported yesterday that Higgins wanted traded, which is weird. I don't know why Higgins was reported yesterday, because we all heard about this last month. Realistically, though, I don't think either player is getting traded. Higgins is on the franchise tag. I think he's going to play on the tag, then realistically probably leave in the offseason. And then Hendrickson, I don't think he'll actually retire. I think he'll play out his contract with Cincinnati and then maybe play elsewhere. I just have a very, very hard time seeing Cincinnati, trading away Hendrickson, a guy who has been your heart and soul of the defense past couple of years. I mean, you just can't trade him. If it comes to trading him or extending him, I feel like you're almost forced into trading him just because, like I said, he has that leverage. He's coming off a career year. And what would you get for him, honestly? Like, it's so weird because when you look at the past couple of years, he is third in sacks, only behind TJ Watt and Myles Garrett. But you don't know, you're not going to pay him more than what he's currently getting, but he's probably going to want more than what he's currently getting. So, I mean, by the time if you sign an extension, by the time his extension will be done, I mean, he'll be 35, 36 maybe years old. There's no way he's going to produce and be better than what he is right now. But at the same time, you look at it, I mean, if we trade a second-round pick for him, I'm not trading Hendrickson to get a second-round pick. It's just not worth it. But you have to look at the fact, let's say hypothetically a team offer us like a top 15 pick for Hendrickson and like a fourth-round pick or something like that. I doubt that happens, but you just kind of have to have all the possibilities and all the options open. Even then, like, you can maybe get a guy like Dallas Turner or Jared Verse, the edge rusher from Florida State. Those guys could be very good. Realistically, they're not better than Hendrickson, and we are in a win-now mode. You don't really want to trade Hendrickson away, so you have to go to Detroit. Higgins is probably final year in Cincinnati, and then you have Hendrickson out of the equation. You look at our defense, all of a sudden, Reeder and Hendrickson gone. I think it's too big of a risk for Cincinnati to trade Hendrickson. It's also very risky to give him an extension, and I think it's better off just giving him an extension. In my opinion, I know this might be unpopular. I'm giving Hendrickson an extension before Higgins. I know many people will probably disagree with me on that. I just think because if you take Hendrickson away from the equation, we have no pass rush whatsoever. I mean, our edge group goes from, pretty good right now to complete crap if you take away Hendrickson. I mean, we have Hubbard, but he's not known to get sacks. He's more so of a run stopper. But if you take Higgins away, we still have Chase at least. So I don't know. It's very tough for Cincinnati. I don't think anybody really thought, Higgins would request a trade. Nobody really thought Hendrickson would request a trade. But this is what happens when you have so many players who are very, very talented and have contracts coming up. And also mentioning, I mean, you look at Jamar Chase, who is going to get a ridiculous contract. I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown signed a 4-year contract worth $30 million yesterday with the Lions, an extension. So, Chase is going to get more than that. And it's also one of those things you don't know whoever's going to sign first with Chase and Justin Jefferson. Whoever signs second of those two will get more money. But it's very, very odd in Cincinnati right now. And you don't know how this will affect maybe some of these younger players, maybe like a guy like Cam Taylor-Britt, who has 2 years left on his deal, is very promising corner, played very good so far in Cincinnati. Well, when you look at Cincinnati not really having talks where the extensions with Higgins and Hendrickson, maybe a guy like Taylor-Britt or some of these younger guys, they're not going to have contract talks with them. They're probably not going to have contract talks with me. So it kind of has, a potential to not be great maybe in the Bengals locker room when it comes to, maybe the long-term future in Cincinnati. But who knows? I expect Hendrickson to play for Cincinnati this season. I expect Higgins to play this season. I would be shocked if Hendrickson isn't on this roster when it comes to week 1 of the 2024 season. But Be very, very interesting to see. So, obviously, with Hendrickson requesting a trade, today is draft day as well. Obviously, it's like Christmas for NFL fans, and it's very interesting who Cincinnati will pick. Lots of people think it may be Byron Murphy is available, defensive tackle from Texas, or maybe Johnny Newton, the defensive tackle from Illinois. I don't really think you can go either. I don't think you can go wrong with either one of these players. They're both fantastic players, and I feel like they would add a great presence to this defensive tackle group who really took a hit once Reeder signed with Detroit in the offseason. I know we signed Sheldon Rankins, but I don't really think I think Rankins is good, but I don't think he's really going to fill that void that with Reeder leaving. But realistically, I know some people may disagree with me in this. This is not necessarily who I want Cincinnati to take. I would much rather have Johnny Newton or Byron Murphy, the defensive tackles. I'd rather have both these players, but realistically, I think Cincinnati is going to select Alabama offensive tackle J.C. Latham, because when you look at Murphy and Newton, realistically, I think one of those players is going to be gone by Cincinnati picking 18. Maybe Murphy goes to Seattle. I've heard his name even being talked about going to the Bears at the 9th pick overall. But when you look at Latham, he could be the event. They signed Trent Brown to a 1-year contract. He has lots of injury issues as well. I believe he's missed 33 games the last 5 years, something like that. And when you look at Trent Brown, let's say he does get hurt. If you have Latham, he could come in, play for Trent Brown, and then he already has the starting experience and playing experience for more likely next year when he takes over the right tackle position, starting over Brown with his contract ending. So I understand that situation, and you also look at the fact that lots of Bengal kind of reporters or close to the team have kind of mocked Latham going to Cincinnati. I believe Paul Denner Jr. had Cincinnati taking Latham at 18. I believe somebody else had Latham going to 18 to Cincinnati as well. So I know it might be a pick where Cincinnati fans might not necessarily agree with it, but realistically, I think that's who they're going to take. But it's interesting because you don't know who's going to fall. Every single draft, whether it's night 1, night 2, or even day 3, there's a couple players who fall for really unexpected reasons, and nobody really knows why. And I mean, it could be a top 5 talent. Players could drop, and you don't really know who's going to fall to Cincinnati at 18. I'm sure there's going to be a player or two who you're not really expecting to be there at 18. For example, Terrion Arnold, the corner from Alabama, that's someone to maybe consider there, because with Chidobe Awuzie leaving in the offseason to sign with the Titans, you have Cam Taylor-Britt, you have DJ Turner, you have Mike Hilton, but Hilton only has 1 year left on his contract. So a guy like Terrion Arnold, the corner from Alabama, he was fantastic this past season for the Crimson Tide, having 5 interceptions, I believe 13 passes broken up. So he's somebody you look at, if he slips at 18, all of a sudden, you're kind of looking at the J.C. Latham, Johnny Newton, Byron Murphy, kind of those 3 guys, I would say more than likely are going to be the pick. I think it's going to be Latham, but I think they'll definitely consider maybe Newton and Murphy. You look at a guy like Terrion Arnold, if he drops to 18, I mean, you open up a whole new can of worms there. So it has more possibilities, and it's interesting. I mean, that's just one player with Arnold, and maybe a guy like Brock Bowers falls to 18. I do not expect Bowers to fall at 18. I think he's going in the top 10. I think he's going to the Jets at 10, or maybe somebody trades up to get him. But I would be shocked if he fell to 18. But you have to look at the different scenarios. If he falls to 18, that's something Cincinnati has to consider. Because realistically, I don't see a player being better than Brock Bowers available at 18. I feel like if Bowers is there at 18, he has to be best player available. There's not probably going to be a better player than him if he's available at 18. But I said, I don't think he will be available. But it's just all the different possibilities for Cincinnati. And it's very interesting, picking 18. We used to be picking, around the top 10, top 12 range when we missed the playoffs. The past couple of years, we've picked around the high 20s, early 30s, and now we're picking right in the middle at 18. So it's very interesting. And you also have to consider maybe there's a guy who is slipping, and he's not going to be there he's not going to be there at 18, but he's falling, let's say maybe at like 12 or 13 or something. Maybe Cincinnati, maybe wants to trade up. I saw a report, somebody tweet something on Twitter, maybe Cincinnati could trade up, and there was supposed to be rumors about that. I don't know how much truth that is to that. Realistically, I don't really buy into it much. But let's say a guy like Joe Alt, the offensive tackle from Notre Dame, is there, let's say, 12. I think that's where the Broncos pick. The Broncos, they pick at 12, and let's say, realistically, the Broncos are probably going to take a quarterback. And Bo Nix and Michael Penix Jr. are probably going to be available there. And, when you're looking at it, maybe the Broncos would trade back with Cincinnati. The Broncos can get more draft capital. And Bo Nix would still be there at 18. I don't see Nix, being picked before 18, especially, there's very limited teams that need a quarterback. But if the Bengals get Joe Alt, just looking at different possibilities. But realistically, I think Cincinnati will select Joe Alt at 18. I think they'll take J.C. Latham at 18. But it'll be very interesting to see. I'm sure regardless of who the Bengals pick at 18, they could have the best pick in the draft. I'm sure some people are going to find a way to talk bad about it. And I'm sure regardless if the Bengals have a terrible pick, some Bengal fans are going to kiss the Bengals front office butt and absolutely love it. My preference to me, I feel like Johnny Newton and Byron Murphy are A1 and AB. I would be fine with either one. I feel like those two, then I'd probably take Latham at 18. A couple players I just don't want. I do not want Amarius Mims. I think I did a short about this. I know I did a video about this maybe a couple weeks ago. I just do not trust Amarius Mims at all. I know some Bengal fans are really excited about the possibility of Mims coming to Cincinnati. I just don't understand it. Like, when you look at Amarius Mims having 800 snaps, 8 starts, he had a tightrope surgery on his ankle this past season. It just has the potential to be a crap storm for Cincinnati. We can't develop offensive linemen at all. And when you add Amarius Mims, a guy who does not have much experience playing, it has potential to be a disaster for Cincinnati at 18 if they elect to take Mims. But, like I said, kind of some trade possibilities. I already kind of mentioned, some trade possibilities for Cincinnati. Very unlikely, I think, they trade up unless there's a guy who maybe falls to 12, like I mentioned, to give the Broncos more draft capital. Maybe a guy like Joe Alt, if he drops to 12, I feel like that's something Cincinnati has to consider. Cincinnati trading back, I feel like it's pretty unlikely. If you do trade back, you got to make sure you're still trading in the first round, so you still get that fifth-year option on the player you pick in the first round. Not necessarily Bengals trades, but a couple of trades I think will end up happening is when you look at the Chicago Bears, they have the 9th pick and the first pick. Obviously, they're going to be taking Caleb Williams with the first pick, but the 9th pick, so the first and 9th, and they have 2 picks the rest of the draft. They have 2 top 10 picks, but the rest of the draft, they have just 2 draft picks. I think it's very likely Chicago maybe trades back with a team. Maybe it's a team like the Colts at 15, or maybe it's a team, the Broncos, something like that. They just want to trade up and get a guy they want. But I think it's very, very likely the Chicago Bears will trade back to get some more draft capital, because having just 4 draft picks is absurd. It's very, very unheard of, and especially having 2 today. But when you look at Chicago, them trading back, and then whoever trades at number 9 with Chicago, I think it's very possible that when you look at whoever has that 9th pick may end up taking Brock Bowers, because there's been lots of talks about Brock Bowers being linked to the New York Jets at number 10. So it really benefits both teams here potentially, because the Bears get more draft capital, and whoever jumps the Jets and has a 9th selection can take Brock Bowers away from the New York Jets. A couple other trade possibilities, maybe some trade ideas. I could definitely see the Chiefs trading out of the first round. If a guy like Michael Penix Jr. or Bo Nix is there at 32, or maybe even a guy who really shouldn't be there, I think there's a good chance maybe they just trade back in a team who really wants that player at 32, has that 5th-year option, and then maybe the Chiefs, with that trade back, they get Xavier Leggett, the wide receiver from South Carolina, or maybe even the West Kentucky wide receiver Malachi Corley. I like Malachi Corley to the Chiefs a lot. I think it makes a lot of sense. It makes their offense so much more explosive. But I think that's a possibility if the Chiefs trade back. Don't be surprised if they maybe take Corley, which would suck because Corley is one of my favorite players in this year's draft. I really want him to go to Cincinnati. I don't want him to go to a team who is competing with Cincinnati in the conference. But like I said, kind of mentioned the Broncos with Cincinnati. I think the Broncos are another team who maybe has the possibility of trading back because you have the Raiders at 13. Realistically, the Broncos trade back. The Raiders will probably take Penix or Bo Nix, and the Broncos maybe trade back a couple spots to get some more draft capital. I don't believe they have a second-round pick, so you can maybe get a second-round pick and still get your guy, whether it's maybe Penix or Bo Nix. One I'm almost certain would be there wherever they trade back. But there's several different trade possibilities. But it's very interesting. I mean, there's so many different, trade possibilities, so many different, talks and players, maybe they might, drop. I'm sure there's going to be a major reach or two in this year's draft. But, a couple of bold predictions here. I don't think there's going to be a trade in the top 5. When you look at 1 and 2, obviously the Bears with Williams. 2, I think realistically, if I'm the Patriots, I would trade back. I really think I'll be in the best interest of their team, but I think they're going to stay at 3. When you look at the Patriots, I mean, they have so many glaring holes at, their team. I mean, they need quarterback, they need wide receiver, they could use help at running back, but they should trade back, but I think they're going to stay put. Number 4, with Arizona, I think they're going to stay put and take Marvin Harrison Jr. And the Chargers, I don't think they're going to be trading back. So I really don't think there's going to be a trade in the top 5. Another bold prediction. I don't think J.J. McCarthy is going top 10 because when you look at McCarthy, the main team that's been linked to J.J. McCarthy, look at the whole draft process, is the Minnesota Vikings. And if they don't trade back, if they don't trade up in the top 5, I really don't see the need for them to even trade up because I don't see what team would trade up to get McCarthy. I don't even know why anybody's even considering McCarthy going first round. I don't think he's going to be good. I don't understand the hype with him at all. But McCarthy slips out of the top 5 and nobody trades up to get him, I think he's just going to keep falling to the Minnesota Vikings at 11. It's very kind of similar during the 2021 season when Matt Jones was projected to go, I believe, 3rd overall when the 49ers traded up. They had the 3rd pick overall. Many people thought it was going to be Matt Jones, but instead it was Trey Lance. And, lots of people throughout that draft process thought, Matt Jones, the Patriots, makes a lot of sense. And Matt Jones kept slipping and falling. And, the Patriots took him, I believe, 15th overall. And I think it's a very similar situation with McCarthy and the Vikings where I don't think McCarthy is going to be needed to be traded up with the Vikings. He'll just slip the Vikings at 11. So I think McCarthy will not go in the top 10. There will not be any trades in the top 5. And then a couple other kind of bold predictions. Like I said, I think the Bears are almost certain to trade the 9th pick. I think whoever has the 9th pick will end up taking Brock Bowers so they can jump the Jets. A couple other bold predictions. I think Patrick Paul, the offensive tackle from Houston, will end up going in the 1st round. I know we said something the other day about he expects to go round 1. There's been lots of talks about him going round 1, and he believes that he's higher on the boards than many people think. But I wouldn't be surprised if Patrick Paul maybe goes to a team like the 49ers. They have the 31st pick in the draft. They're going to use help at offensive tackle. And I know lots of people don't like Patrick Paul, but he's absolutely massive. 6'7", 350 pounds. Has some of the highest PFF grades of any offensive tackle in this year's draft. And it's so crazy to put in perspective, how I mentioned earlier about the lack of experience that Marius Mims has, 800 snaps in his career. Latham's pretty experienced offensive lineman. He has 1,800 snaps, but Patrick Paul has 2,900 snaps. He is far and away the most experienced offensive tackle in this year's draft. So I think that, wouldn't be a shocking pick there if Paul maybe ends up going to the 49ers at the 31st pick overall. And the biggest bold prediction by far, I think Corley can maybe end up going to the Kansas City Chiefs at 32nd overall. In my mock draft, I had Corley going to the Chiefs at the last pick of the 1st round. But it's one of those things, I don't do trades on mock drafts. I think just way too hard to predict. And I think that they're very unnecessary and kind of, overblown a little bit. But if I were to do trades, I would have had the Chiefs take Corley with their 2nd round pick with them trading their 1st round pick back. But it's very interesting, Hendrickson's winning out. You don't know who the Bengals are going to take at 18. You don't know how much that maybe would persuade Cincinnati to maybe take an edge rusher at 18. But I do not expect a guy like Dallas Turner to fall to 18. But if he's there, I feel like that's something you really got to consider if you're Cincinnati, just mainly because the rumors and all the talks and the stuff with Trey Hendrickson the past day or so, and it's something that it's just a very odd timing, with Trey Hendrickson's agent, kind of talking about this and wanting Hendrickson to request a trade. But maybe a guy like Jared Verse for Cincinnati, if he's there at 18, that's something they consider. And I don't think this completely changes the Bengals draft board. With Hendrickson winning out, I feel like it may slightly change maybe their maybe position needs, or maybe a little bit. A guy might go up a little bit, but I really don't think this Hendrickson, with him leaving, requesting a trade in Cincinnati, would change their draft board too much. It would be very interesting tonight, the NFL draft. Comment who you're wanting the Bengals to draft. Comment who you want the Bengals not to draft. Cannot wait for the draft tonight. If you're new to the channel or listening to this before, make sure to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you all next time on the Sports 2 Hines Show.